Call the roll.
Agent,
Here.
Clegg,
Here.
Halliburton,
Here.
Sanchez,
Here.
Thompson, Woodings,
Here.
all present.
Thank you. Well, good. It's great to see everybody and actually to see your faces. I think this is the first time I've seen council members' faces in a year. So welcome back, everybody. We have a full agenda. I'm going to ask Courtney to kick it right off. I'll say some remarks, a couple slides down.
Awesome. Madam Mayor, members of the council, good morning and welcome to the budget workshop. We have each of the departments here for you today to go through the budget request. But before we get started, just a couple things to keep in mind. I think first is the only adage I could come up with is it takes a village to make a city budget. So a deep appreciation for all the staff that's involved with pulling this information together, particularly Eric Bilmoria, Linda, and Christine for their work on this. Christine is here to keep track of your questions and need for additional information, so we won't lose those during the day. We are pressed for time to be able to truly highlight each department. If a question takes a more in-depth answer, we'll note it down and get back to you. Let me check and see if that was everything. Yep. So with that, this is the agenda for today. We'll start with some context from me, and then Eric will go over the strategy and approach for the budget, and then we'll get to the department directors. We've changed the order of the departments to reflect some needed resources in internal and shared services. So that would be human resources, information technology, legal, and DFA. And then we go to the general fund operations. I think I put those in alphabetical order. And then we end with the enterprise funds. As a reminder, those are the two funds that we have that are fully self-sufficient, that don't rely on general fund operations. So the other thing we'd like to do is if you have questions for the departments, you don't need to save them till the end. If they're quick questions or questions you want us to follow up on, you can just address the director after their or during their presentation. And with that, Madam Mayor, I'll hand it back to you.
Great. Thanks, everybody. And thanks, Courtney. You know, I jotted down a couple of thoughts this morning just to kick us off. And so I thought I'd share those with you. You know, this last year, and really it's been a year and a half, each of us as staff, as council, as the community really has endured an incredibly historic and unusual experience. And it's demanded a lot of us, flexibility, creativity, focus, commitment, courage, and stamina, like stamina for so many of you above all. And so as we move into the presentation today and the discussions we're having, which I really look forward to, you know, this is a people-centered budget. It reflects, as we all reflect, the community and the needs of the community. And I want to thank staff. Staff took in stride really difficult circumstances, daily unknowns. You met unexpected demand. You juggled crisis needs, looked to the future at the same time with a commitment to our vision of a city for everyone. This budget reflects it but most importantly, the service that each of you provides daily. I mean, the impact that we have as a city government for the people of Boise reflects that. And to council, I want to thank each of you for the partnership that you've provided. For that, I'm really, really grateful. You know, a year and a half ago, we had new members, a new mayor. We're trying to figure out how to work together. And suddenly we needed to juggle that with new technology and a year apart. But through it all, through Zoom, for those of us that could be here, you led through it. You partnered with staff and with me to address the crisis in this community. We showed in the state that Boise would lead, but at the same time that we addressed crisis needs, we are looking to the future and thinking about what our community at the end of all this to get through it would need. This budget reflects that partnership as well. So, you know, I've said it a couple times what the budget reflects, but it really does look at and take into account where we've been, where we are today, who we've become through this crisis that we've all experienced together, and where we are headed. And for that, I'm really excited to have the conversation because it reflects our values. It embraces our mission, and it's focused on the people of Boise and the services they need. And ultimately, that is our job. The goal of this document that reflects the values that we have, but the services and support and importance of the people of the city. So we'll start today with growth and some expectations. We'll move through departments. I'm really proud of the work that got us here, that all of you made possible. And those of you that might be watching, please tell your teams. I really appreciate them, and look forward to the conversation. And with that, I'll head it back to you.
So if I had to theme our current budget year, it would be COVID. And so I think the COVID impacts showed true leadership, agility, and innovation in a time of constant change for both internal staffing operations and the services we provided to the public. We maintained a focus on employee and community safety. We delivered all essential services and reallocated resources to support vulnerable population, in addition to convene with partners and deepened relationships throughout the community. We innovated to offer services. Some of those will continue with us, hybrid meetings, for example, and digital access to services. Lots of those we will continue moving forward, including curbside delivery as an option at the libraries. So if I had to pick a theme for the budget we're creating today, it would be growth and economic recovery. So the current budget was conservative. We weren't sure how the economy would interact with our revenue and the impacts to the community. All evidence I'll present today points to rapid growth. So the GDP projection for 2021 increased from 3.1% to 6.2%. The local economy is on its way to recovery. There are some exceptions. Think hospitality, large event venues, and hotels seem to be lagging. And the unemployment rate was down to 3.6% in March and 3.1% in April. Jobs are available, and there's a tightening in the labor market. Construction is healthy and sales tax is high. Immigration within the city continues. And the community challenges, priorities, and opportunities remain the same. As you all are very aware, we have a housing challenge, both affordable housing, sheltering of those without homes, and an inventory shortage at all income levels without the community. We are working to combat the impacts of climate change, transportation, and a modern system for the city Boise will become remains a priority. Economic development, truly assisting businesses that you all would like to see in the community come here and thrive. And then public safety remains a challenge in terms of the growth of the population and the expense associated in that area. Our service demands have increased. I'm sure you've heard me say this, but I pulled some stats just to emphasize the point. April 2021 marked a 5-year high in both applications and project valuations. This was the basis of the interim budget change you recently did to give the Planning and Development Service Department much needed resources. We had 3 times the traffic in the foothills. An aspect of that that's not widely known is the involvement of the fire department with the increase of use of the foothills. That was up 121%. 911 calls continue to increase, moving BPD resources to emergency calls and away from community policing assignments. And we've got 20% growth in flights projected in the next 6 months. Overall growth, Idaho is the second fastest growing state. Don't ask me who's the first, because I meant to look that up and I didn't. The MSA has seen double-digit population increases for the past 2 years. And as the state and the valley's economic driver and cultural center, more people are living, working, and playing. The city staffing growth trends, I wanted to put this in perspective before we get into the request for positions in this budget. Between the fiscal year 2017 and 2020, the city added an average of 28 positions per year. Last year is an anomaly for the reasons I mentioned earlier, and 9 positions were added. The rate of population growth, the position growth has not kept up with population growth. So the MSA population is up 14% and city staffing is up by 9%. The internal support services are not keeping up with our external facing departments, and workload issues in the support departments have become an issue in executing citywide priorities. We are proposing growth in the internal services, but we will need to continue to ensure that the internal services are keeping track with the external services. So let's take, for example, Parks and Rec. It's not just building the parks, offering the programs. It has implications on IT, HR, legal, and DFA to be able to provide the support that department needs. I'm not just picking on parks. I could do that for all sorts of departments. So this year, we're hoping to catch up in staffing after the minimal growth last year. Again, we're an average of 28 positions over the past couple years, and 9 were added in the current fiscal year. So our budget request is for 39 FTEs in the general fund to both address the growing needs of the community and to catch up. You'll see a list here of these positions. We will be providing you with further detail about what these positions are and what they will do, but I'll pause here. So if you have any questions.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Courtney. So going back to one of your other slides, there was like a 17% growth in population. We've had 9% growth in city staff over the same period. What percentage of growth does this encapsulate? And I'm getting to my next question, so you don't have to be exact.
I'm hoping Eric is doing the math over here.
Oh, and by the way, the fastest growing state is Utah.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
That would make sense.
Yep.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, as I understand the question, are you asking with these positions, does that bring us up to proportional growth with the MSA growth?
No, I'm asking what percentage of growth this proposed, it's what percent?
If I'm doing backwards, like say that's 40 and we have 2,000 employees, so then it's 20,500. And
That math would work. that math would work.
What I was
can
kind of
validate
getting
that.
at is that we now have a structure under which our growth, our budget growth is severely limited. And I was just wondering what kind of the nexus of this growth versus the limited budget growth that we're under from, our legislative colleagues down the street, how those kind of interface. Is this growth kept very low because of those budget constraints, or do you kind of see what I'm getting at?
Yes, I think I do.
Okay.
I mean, as these recommendations were developed, it was certainly a primary goal to ensure that the long-term forecast could remain balanced. The long-term forecast is reflective of the recent reductions to property tax. So we do feel that the position adds are reflective of the reduced rate of growth and can be supported going into the future.
Okay, so this isn't necessarily an increase that would catch us up with where we should be. This is an increase that is consistent with the constraints put on us by the legislature. So this won't maintain perhaps our current level of service as our community grows.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor. Courtney, thank you. What's the fourth bullet? Are these the 2.5 positions that we talked about a couple weeks ago in DFA, or is it something else just below legal?
The fourth,
Yeah, the limited duration to permanent conversion.
I'm going to take a stab at that, but I'm sure Eric's standing behind me to see if I get it right or wrong. We have, as the city, have had a habit of making FTEs limited duration if we can't add them permanently. So we went back and cleaned those up so that they are no longer limited duration, because that moniker seems to be a bit false. When we add those positions, we usually end up keeping them.
And the departments it includes are DFA, Public Works, and HR.
Okay, and so these people are actually already here.
In some cases.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you for not asking me to do math. This concludes
Madam Mayor,
my,
sorry,
mhm.
I couldn't get my,
Oh my goodness, we're already behind schedule.
I'll be really quick. I'll be really quick. Just a note, the 0.5 FTE in the Office of Police Accountability, right now, our contracts, and we've maintained those for some years, are more than the cost of that 0.5. Is that correct?
We believe that is the case. Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome. So that concludes my part. I think I come back at the end of the day to wrap it up. And now I'll hand it over to Eric.
Thank you very much, Courtney. Madam Mayor, members of the council, I'm going to go through a handful of slides to just hit on our overall strategy and approach. And throughout the course of the morning and afternoon, you'll hear additional details. So just at a very high level, in developing the fiscal year 22 budget, there were a handful of principles. The first one is, just to be fiscally and financially prudent. So as mentioned just a moment ago, we set a goal of ensuring that our 5-year forecast would remain in balance based on projected growth in expenditure, projected changes in revenue, and still allowing for investment in community and city needs. There are some budget savings and revenue opportunities that were included in the development of the proposed budget. One of the things that we did, and we've talked to the council about in the past, has been reducing the amount of funding allocated towards department operations, specifically to non-personnel type actions. And we did include a continued right sizing of our non-personnel. As Courtney mentioned, there are some targeted investments in response to citywide growth. Some of those are public safety. You saw on the previous slide a number of positions proposed for our police department and then our support departments as well. The revenue estimates that we have built into both fiscal year 22 and within our 5-year forecast do represent growth. The fiscal year 21 budget, when it was prepared, was actually a 1.1% drop from the prior year. The fiscal year 22 budget does represent a return to growth in many of our revenue categories. Our goal is to ensure that we're proactively allocating resources. So when we developed the fiscal year 21 budget, we didn't necessarily know how COVID was going to play out. Turns out the revenue estimates were probably a bit conservative. We think that we have corrected that for fiscal year 22. And again, with the goal of investing those resources back into the community. We do aim to ensure that we don't have, a significant amount of funding left over at the end of the year when we close out the books. And that was an objective of this budget. This budget does also include investments in various strategic initiatives, those areas that Courtney mentioned just a moment ago, particularly housing and climate innovation and public safety. Some other themes and concepts included within the budget. The budget does retain our cash flow reserve at 8%. Our cash flow reserve is intended to cushion the city from unanticipated revenue drops. It also is available for unanticipated or emergency needs. And the city council had long ago set a target of maintaining 8% within that cash flow reserve, which we are at. The budget does include contingency funding in other areas to also address unanticipated needs, which would hopefully allow us to retain that 8% level should unexpected changes arise. The proposed budget will include funding for public transportation for VRT, again, at a level equal to 5% of property taxes. The budget for fiscal year 22 really looked at a 2-year view. So we looked at what's happening in the current year and we looked at what's projected to happen next year. And as I mentioned a moment ago, the fiscal year 21 revenue estimates that we developed approximately a year ago did have some upside in them. So we have captured that upside as part of this this budget development cycle and have recommendations as to how to allocate that funding. Another element of the current fiscal year budget that this year differs from is in the current year, there were no base compensation increases for our general employees. The fiscal year 22 proposed budget does include the resumption of base increases for the general employees. One of the things that we've experienced over the last year, absent those base increases have been, folks leaving the city, looking for other opportunities and whatnot. And we've had a retention issue. So we're hoping that this will aid in that. Another element that we have in the fiscal year 22 budget is $2.5 million for portfolio projects or one-time department type projects. We may not have details on how that 2.5 million would be allocated at the time we present the budget in all of its details in June, but we would commit to coming back to City Council with an overview and for approval of those as those projects are identified. The 22 budget, as mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, does include the creation of the Office of Police Accountability. There is funding in fiscal year 22 to free up some of our funding that we have previously allocated towards debt service. As I mentioned, the proactive use of fiscal year 21 anticipated surplus. As we look at that, we have targeted that one-time need for retiring some of the debt service that we have on the books. I believe there was a memo that was shared with council last week on that purpose. Really, the express goal of that action was to free up ongoing base resources, which could then be invested back into the community.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thanks. First of all, I'd like to join Madam Mayor in thanking everyone for the incredible work you've done this year. And chief among those was Eric. And I want to call him out specifically because he helped not just the city of Boise, but every city in this state figure out their way through these really tough times. And so thank you, Eric.
Thank you very much.
My question, I support freeing up the ongoing base by reducing our debt. But my question for you is, going forward, if we were to determine that the most prudent way, say, to go forward on more public facilities, fire stations, police stations, or parks are the things that come to mind the most, and determine that we need to run a bond or that we'd like to run a bond, ask the public if it makes sense to pay for these upfront and then pay them off with debt. If we do this, we're essentially going to allocate what would otherwise maybe be available to that debt service to ongoing needs. And I just want to make sure that we remain nimble enough that we could pursue that opportunity if it did come up to us. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you. And I do believe that the forecast would allow us the opportunity to be nimble and address something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. The fiscal year 22 proposed budget will effectively allow for almost the entire amount of the American Rescue Plan funding to be utilized for purposes outlined within the guidelines of the American Rescue Plan. There are several allowable uses that we've had in the interim guidance that we've received from the federal government. One of those is revenue replacement and expenditure reimbursement for non-covered items through previous stimulus packages or previous aid packages. There's only a small portion of that we are currently targeting, although we're still evaluating and determining if there are other opportunities to reimburse the city for lost revenue. As Councilmember Woodings was asking about the statewide legislation regarding property tax, the proposed budget most certainly does account for those impacts and has reduced our growth assumptions in the property tax line item. And on that last note, I'll go over property taxes in a little bit more detail in just a moment. The fiscal year 22 proposed budget does include the utilization of funds that were previously being held for the main library for more immediate use out in the community. There's two primary areas where those funds have been recommended to be allocated. The first is housing. So as we look at housing, and you'll hear more about this throughout the day and throughout the budget process, we have allocated approximately $17 million of that $25 million towards housing. And that's really in a couple of different areas. One would be through the acceleration of some of the support facilities that we have, replacing where those support facilities are housed. So we have our parks maintenance yard and we have our fire logistics center, both of which may be prime candidates for housing opportunities. By accelerating the replacement of those within this budget and within this 5-year view, we could make use of those parcels for housing. Additionally, we have funding for a permanent supportive housing included within our 5-year plan. The other thing that we've done within that $25 million is reallocate it towards major repairs and maintenance. And this is a theme you've probably heard me talk about over the years. As we looked at that major repairs and maintenance needs we have across the city, there was a significant investment made from that $25 million previously held for the main library towards our existing library system. Additional recommendations are made for our parks, public works, and arts and history departments to ensure that we're maintaining our current assets. You'll also hear today later on about some of the equipment replacements that we have recommended as part of the fiscal year 22 budget. And that really runs the gamut within public safety, from SCBAs or air packs to radios to mobile terminals. There's a whole slate of different public safety needs that are addressed.
Madam Mayor.
Yep.
Just real quickly, just want to note on the Grow Our Housing, first of all, thanks to the administration and my fellow council members for supporting the idea of doing something meaningful about permanent supportive housing quickly. My request would be that we set aside some time in a future work session to really dig into it.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, kind of along that same thought, I am still mourning the loss of a library that we never had a little bit. But I do recognize that we had a significant capital fund built up for that project. And, now as we're reevaluating our needs, it makes a lot of sense to shift that over as we replan for the future of our library system. But I am still a little sad.
Thank you very much. I just have a couple more slides before we go into the department presentations. I wanted to talk a little bit about property tax. So the budget that will be presented to you in the month of June will include a 3% base growth assumption within property taxes. Looking back last year, there was a 0% increase. The 3% for base growth is really required to preserve service levels and keep up with growth. The budget is reflective of the most recent legislation. Some of the impacts to the city are a 90% cap on new construction and annexation, a change to the new construction formula, and an overall annual growth cap. I presented this slide, I think last week when the county assessor was here. It's probably one that will continue to show, and I'll just walk through it briefly. We do an analysis every year to try and determine the impact on the average priced home of any city decision to increase property taxes. And I'll just kind of go top to bottom on this one. In the most recent assessment period, the average priced home, according to the county, increased from $351,000 to $455,000, approximately a 30% increase. The homeowner's exemption was increased from $100,000 to $125,000, but you can see on the next line the taxable value for that home actually increased by 31.5%. And that's due to the rate of the assessed value increasing and the rate of the homeowner's exemption increase not keeping up with that. You can see the projected levy rate expected to go up approximately 4%. And you can see on line 6, the amount of city taxes increasing by approximately 37% on that home. On the next section below, you can see what the impact would have been on that particular home if the city were to have built in a 0% increase. And you can see lines 9, 10, and 11 are unchanged. You can see on line 12, the city levy rate would have gone down slightly from line 5 up above. And you can see the city taxes on line 14 would be $371.37 higher than the prior year. So on line 15, you can see that the savings from the city taking a 0% increase would be approximately just under $45. That $371.37 that's outlined on line 14 is attributable to 3 primary factors. The first being the one-time relief that was included in the current fiscal year for property tax payers will be rolling off. And again, that one-time relief was made available because the city took a 0% increase as part of the current fiscal year budget and was able to participate in the city's, or excuse me, in the state's and the governor's property tax relief program. That was a one-time program, so that relief will be rolling off for fiscal year 22. The other factors that are driving that are first, the diminishing value of the homeowner's exemption. The city has long advocated for meaningful increase in the homeowner's exemption. Had the homeowner's exemption continued to be indexed in the way that it was prior to 2016, it would be $150,000 for fiscal year 22. So another $25,000 higher than it will be next year. The other thing that we're seeing is very divergent rates of appreciation between commercial properties and residential properties. So residential properties are appreciating at a much higher rate than those commercial properties. So when you couple the rate of increase with the residential properties with the diminishing value of that homeowner's exemption, we are seeing increases in residential property taxes. Again, why the city has advocated for significant increases to the homeowner's exemption and a slate of other potential fixes for that issue.
Or we could call it meaningful or actual property tax relief.
Yes.
Madam Mayor. First, thank you, Eric. You're so clear at explaining this, and it's wonderful. The two big takeaways that I wish that people really would understand, you can infer from your slide here first that the city of Boise could shrink its budget by 3% and homeowners' property taxes would go up. And that's because what's driving your property taxes is not the 3% budgetary increase. I think a lot of people focus on that. It's the things over here in your column on the side. It's the shift to residential property taxes. Residents are now carrying close to 70% of the tax burden in our city, and that won't change until the legislature reindexes the formula and until the legislature actually addresses the homeowners exemption. So this slide is such a clear explanation for it. I saw it last year. I see it this year. I love it. And thank you for doing such a good job of really showing citizens that the 3% we always talk about is on average this year $44.79 of a $300 increase to the property tax bill. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And maybe to elaborate on that point, last year's budget, the general fund actually declined by 1.1%. There was 0% base growth in property taxes, and absent the one-time relief made possible through the state and the city's 0% increase, the average homeowner still would have seen an increase despite reduction to the city's budget and no increase in property tax. That actually was my last slide. I'll be available. I can, stand for any questions that you might have had on that stuff, and I'll be available throughout the course of the afternoon.
Madam Mayor.
We'll go with Councilmember Halliburton.
Thank you. Eric, I should have asked this when you were actually on the slide, but there's a strategies and investments page. And one of the bullet points on there is a return to base compensation increases for general employees. And I'm just curious if that includes adjustments for the increase in cost of living and like local salary comparisons to what some of our other places are offering on that bullet point.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I should have elaborated a little bit more. So there's really two elements to that. So the first is returning to a 3% merit-based increase, which is available for employees. And again, that 3% is merit-based. The other element, I think, to address your question is there is an allowance for market rate adjustments. And that's one of the things that we have seen, and HR might be able to elaborate on that in their presentation. With no base increases, we have seen, retention issues, and we have seen, folks moving to other agencies and whatnot. So there is a market rate adjustment built into there. HR will go through a process to evaluate where those market rate adjustments are warranted.
Perfect, Eric. The market rate adjustment is exactly what I was trying to ask. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Eric. So my question is, or actually, I just want your help pointing this out. So those savings are negligible by not taking our 3%. It's a reduction in services, correct? That's what that translates to, that we're not able to serve our community at the level that we need to with the growth?
Absent the 3%? Correct. Correct.
For example,
For example, some of the public safety investments that we have would not be possible. We would not be able to grow staff at all. We might actually be looking at reductions. The cumulative impact of the 3% from the city's finances, is approximately over a 5-year period is approximately $25 million. And again, you saw on the average homeowner, it's a portion, it's a very small portion of the overall increase that they're seeing. But I guess to get to your question, you could be looking at reductions in public safety. You could be looking at reductions in parks maintenance or park services, some of the support functions, which are critical to, ensuring that we can execute on our projects. You'd probably be looking at reductions in numerous places.
thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One quick question on the VRT funding. I assume that keeps funding levels in line with what was championed by Councilmember Clegg a few years ago. Just want to make sure it stays in line with that.
It does. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And I want to echo the council president's thanks, not only for the work that you did on this budget internally, but the work that you did with cities around the state as we were looking at the impact of property tax legislation. It really means a lot to the association, but also to those cities around Idaho.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. There were many other folks in the room that assisted with that. So appreciate them as well. Thanks.
Okay, now we're going to do the roundup of departments, and I imagine staff will just come up. We've all got the ordering on this blue sheet. Welcome, Linda. And after Linda, we'll hear from Sarah Borden in HR.
Great. Thank you. Good morning, Council and Mayor. And I'm Linda Lauer, in the City CFO and the Director of Finance and Administration. Kind of like to highlight what we've been up to in DFA the last several years, some recent changes in the department, and kind of the background for our FY22 budget requests. So the past few years the past several years in DFA, it's been about building a strong foundation. It's been about being able to provide accurate, timely, and sound financial controls and reporting. And I'm happy to report that we've been pretty successful at that. Over the last several years, we've updated all of our policies and regulations in DFA that align with best practices. And as of this last fiscal year, we've gone now 7 years with no audit findings in our financial reports. In addition to that, we've been really focused on strong financial management. Through the boom time since the last recession, we've been able to build our cash reserves back up to our 8%. And we've implemented some other tools in terms of like a 5-year financial forecast, so we can be more proactive and look more out in the future, and tools such as priority-based budgeting. More recently, the focus has been on improving our system infrastructure in DFA by replacing old technology and implementing new technology that can provide better transparency, automation, efficiencies, and which is essential for the city to grow. So you'll see a list of those below. We recently replaced our budget management system, which is really going to improve our processes in the budget office, transparency and workflow. And especially we launched OpenBook, which is a public transparency platform on our financials. It's available on the city's website. You can open OpenBook and see dashboards and drill down into specific information on budget versus actual spend, citywide revenue, department revenue, staffing levels, all kinds of different information. We're in the process of implementing a new procure to pay system. The system, we're hoping, will make it much easier for vendors to do business with the city. They'll be able to go on the system and see at any given point in time where their particular contract is in the procurement process, as well be able to track where their invoices are in the process and know when to get paid. It'll also create a lot of efficiencies for staff. It'll automate our purchasing process as well. And we've also citywide implemented a new permit and licensing system called Acela. This is really impacted the ability for citizens, at least in the city clerk's office, as well as in planning and development services, to be able to majority of their services that they interact with the city with online now. It's also created opportunities for us to have a robust tracking of license and code compliance data, and better analytics for that data as well. We've got just a couple of systems that we've recently worked on that were really antiquated and outdated. For instance, our physical records management system was so old that it was only working on one computer throughout the city that still was running an old Windows version. And HR was telling us that that was going to crash any day now. So we managed to get our record system, new system implemented there. We have a cashiering system that we use at the front counter that is also kind of a one-man shop out of his garage, and he's ready to retire. And so we have high risk there. So we're looking to replace that system as well. The city has implemented a new public records request tracking system that's actually proprietary. It was built in-house. And that's to ensure with the volume of public records requests we're getting that, that we're tracking and complying with all those PRRs in a timely and efficient manner. And then as Eric mentioned, and you'll see in the IT presentation, is we're currently, although we're not investing any funds in 22, we're currently doing due diligence on potentially replacing our ERP system. Our current system is, at least the version we're on, is reaching its end of useful life. We'll be forced in a year or so to decide whether to upgrade or switch. And there's been a lot of changes in the market on ERP systems since our last system was implemented. And we want to make sure that we're looking to potentially take advantage of all those new technology and new functionality that could offer us as well. So in FY22 and beyond, the goal in DFA will be to take the organization to the next level. And that means more accurate and robust financial reporting and analytics to help decision makers meet the challenges of a growing city by making more timely, informed, and data-driven decisions. This year, we did an organizational assessment in DFA to determine our readiness for that. We looked at what are our resources, our skill sets, and do we need to realign any roles and responsibilities to be able to achieve that goal? The immediate takeaway from that organizational assessment was that before the department could move forward and achieve any of those goals, we needed to address workload issues and current deficiencies in staffing. While we've been hard at work in building our foundation and building our infrastructure and replacing systems, our day-to-day work has increased significantly. That has absorbed any capacity that we had to do this type of work in the future. The last 4 years in DFA, we've seen our transactional workload increase. The number of POs annually is increased by 16%. GL transactions has increased by 10%. Citywide revenue, citywide expenses have increased by 14 and 12% respectively. And then last year, as we all know, and into the future, there was a significant amount of time spent by DFA staff on handling the transactional workload associated with the COVID relief funds. We processed thousands of transactions related to COVID expenses and disbursements, and we spent hundreds of hours tracking and coding those expenses and compiling required documentation. Thus, the focus on our FY22 budget requests. And those requests are just really to, like I mentioned, to fill those critical resource needs and workload demands in order for us to free up capacity and plan for the transformational work that we need to do in the future. So with that, I will be happy to stand for any questions, or if you have any.
Madam Mayor.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Linda. That's a large increase in your workload. So is just kind of distilling this down is basically what you're saying, that your hope is that by improving technology and also increasing your staff a little bit, you'll be able to handle that 17% increase in transactions without growing your staff by 17%?
Yes, very well put. Thank
Okay,
you. That is
great.
exactly the goal. And as we look to plan for the future and we look to build the organization of the future, there may be additional resource requests as well. But this is just what we've identified now to meet the demands of the workload now.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I appreciate all of the work that you all have done over the past year, helping us get out business grants and things that were completely outside of your scope in the prior year budget request. So thank you.
Thank you. Along those same lines, I think as I look back on my time as a city council member, I'm reminded by all of this how hard the city has tried over the years to balance that need of service demand with budget, and trying to make sure that we didn't grow at a rate that was unsustainable or at a rate that was more than our residents needed. We wanted to make sure that we could serve our residents well. And I think the last year has maybe highlighted how important it is that we get this right. And I think it's also highlighted to me how little maybe both our residents and some of the state legislators understand how we attempt to do that balancing act. So I really appreciate, and it appears that all of you will help tell this story, that you are telling the story of why we need more personnel, what we're doing to keep up with service demand, and how in fact, despite that, we're still not increasing at the level that we've grown or the level that those service demands have grown. And I think that is an important factor and an important thing to remember as we build this budget, that there are a lot of new positions in here. I think for some of us, that's kind of a, wow, that's a big deal. And it is a big deal, but it's also a really big deal to our residents that we maintain the level of service that they expect, and that we do it in a way that allows us to continue to maintain the efficiency that comes with actually providing the right level of service. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your support. I appreciate it.
Sarah, welcome up. Thank you, Linda. And after Sarah, we'll have Sharon Jensen from IT.
Hello. So thank you, council members, mayor. I'm Sarah Borden, Director of Human Resources, and I have the lovely fortune of talking about our people. This is the best job anywhere. And this has been quite a year for our folks. It's been tough. We've talked about that. We use the word resilient. We use the word agile. That's really what's reflected in the workforce we have. And in HR, we are laser focused on trying to make sure that we have a workplace for everyone in support of creating a city for everyone. And so that's some of the things I'll talk about. Our people really are our biggest investment. Paying attention to their needs, what's working for them, what isn't, is really what we do. And it's an important thing for what we do. So in this last year with COVID, the first main priority is how do we keep our employees in the community as safe as possible? We have our risk and safety team, and they've just done incredible work. Talk about being agile, sort of learning as we go, how to shift and make sure that everybody has the protective gear they need, how do you distance, all those different things. And so that's been a major, major focus, and one that we just are still in. We're still working on that every day. But part of that, we saw that there was a desperate need to telework, to get people to be able to be productive, be separated. So one day, sort of people said that those who could telework were sent home to do work from home. And watching how that occurred and how well that occurred was really something. And for those who weren't able to telework and came to work every day and sort of made sure that they were safe and secure, that was a big effort, and lots went into that. But specific to the telework, what we did that out of necessity. But now we're shifting to a hybrid work format that we're doing on purpose. Our employees said for those who are eligible and positions are eligible, this really worked. It worked for them, it worked for the life they're trying to live, and it worked for the city, that people could be productive working together in city facilities when they can, working in collaborative work, and then also being able to be home and just do production work as best they can. So just so you're aware, we're shifting to this longer term hybrid work model starting June 1, and that those whose positions are eligible will be able to work a portion of their week from home. We've all talked as directors about how that can work, and that it's based on position, not sort of who's your friend and how are they doing. It's really based on the work. And we'll see how that goes. We'll work through it, and there may be some bumps in the road, but we're paying attention to that. So that's something that we're hopeful, makes people feel like they've really been heard for those who can. In addition, over the last year, we continued to recruit and hire. There was a hiring pause because we had to be really careful with our resources. But even in the pause, that created a new process, which took time, different kinds of time. So there was a lot going on just to keep ourselves operational and intact. There also was a lot of great work done in the ADA Title II and Title VI space. We had a community working group, still do, who's really been informing us on the needs. Everything from our programs and services from the departments to the facilities and how we can navigate those better. So that work continues. And I understand there's a report that will be coming out in the next month or so that really outlines sort of our facilities and how we can work through those over a fair bit of time it's going to take. Then Connect Boise is our way of having employees and their supervisors or managers connect with each other around how are things going? How are they performing? Do they have what they need to do their jobs? And what's really cool about having that framework in place when we hit all this was we already had the system so that people could stay connected. Even if it was over video, there were regular checkpoints to make sure both employees had what they need, but that they were doing okay in a really, really tough time. So we're really proud of that structure that's been in place and will continue. And then also just this was a project that touched a lot of places, but was under the radar because of the execution, the access control upgrade. So every place where you see you need to flash your badge, all those got upgraded. And people don't know about it because it was executed quite well. So our safety team are really proud of that. So those are some sort of major things we focused on over the last year. And then moving forward, there's obviously recruiting, advertising, making sure people know that we have positions available. Some we can do local recruiting, it's great. Others we need to do nationwide, and just making sure we have the funding to do that as the job market gets tighter. Frankly, that's something we're really paying attention to. Couple other things, also the market rate analysis that was mentioned, we're putting money into that so that we can make sure it's not sort of a one-off. I heard this job's kind of hard to fill. What are we doing? It's really an overview of here are the tougher to fill jobs. What market rate adjustments do we need to make, and doing it more proactively. That's on the radar for this next year, as well as looking at what we're calling the future of work. You know, we went through sort of a tumultuous year. The kinds of work, the gig economy, these things are coming. And so instead of sort of getting behind, we want to make sure we understand what is the future of work and how can we make sure that we're providing the rewards and recognition and those kinds of things to really benefits that will attract workers in the future as things shift. So trying to be proactive in that space. So I'll stand for questions.
Madam Mayor. Thank you. And thank you so much, Sarah. One thing that I think throughout the pandemic has become a really big topic is living wage.
Mhm.
And I was wondering if you could, and one of the things I'm most proud of the city of Boise for doing is making sure that all employees make a living wage.
Mhm.
I understand that it might be time to reassess what living wage is. Can you kind of walk me through that process a little bit?
Yeah, and as I understand it, what is the index of living wage? Which are we using, right? Because there's different ones that different organizations have used. And that's something we'll continue to look at. I know, there was the raise up to that, I believe last year, and that got us in a really good place. And it's something we're just going to have to keep paying attention to. It's definitely on our radar as something to watch along with the market rate adjustments. So we're sort of looking at the full workforce and what those issues are. So it's definitely something we're thinking about and working on.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And Mary,
Yes, go ahead.
just real quick, thanks for all the hard work in HR last year. I know it's a challenging year for every single department, and I think a lot of it, fell on HR and IT to figure out how to get everybody through. So I appreciate all the work that's done over there. I also really appreciate that you're looking at the market rate evaluations. I think that that's so important right now that we kind of keep at the tip of the spear when we're evaluating those things, because I know it's an issue at every single business in Boise. So thank you for looking at that.
Yes, you're welcome.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you, Sarah. So I think we have a really great opportunity here, and that is to find out as people leave this organization, why they're leaving this
Mhm.
organization,
Mhm.
and perhaps having some deep conversations with our staff if they trust us enough to be honest, to say what they want to stay with the city of Boise. I know myself, I've always done what I call do-gooder work, which doesn't pay a lot of money, but there were other benefits that made it so that I stayed for a while. And I think if there's anything for us to learn from last year, it's that there are other assets that come with being a part of an organization that will keep you there, even if the money isn't what you would like it to be. So I'm hoping that we will do that, that we will find ways to connect with our staff to find out what it would take for them to stay with us. I'd also like to know at some point, what was the exodus last year and this year?
Okay.
What do those numbers look like so that we can make some decisions based on good information so that we can be better.
Yep.
But thank you so much. And again, to echo my colleagues, this is not easy. And as a former civil rights investigator, I know what HR, what they have on their plate. So very much appreciate your efforts, Sarah.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Oh, did I? No, okay. So next up, Sharon, welcome.
Madam Mayor and council members, thank you for your time today. IT's, first of all, I'm Sharon Jensen. I'm not the usual CIO, standing in for Erica Cobb, who has recently left, actually last Friday. So our IT's focus primarily is on 4 areas. We're focused on the continued compliance and security. We're focusing on preparing for our future and foundational work for modernizing current and future investments, and also continuing to keep the lights on and maintain our current technology investments. Some of those specifics that we've accomplished so far this fiscal year is a major shift in our Microsoft 365 platform. We went to an entirely different platform. One of the main goals is to meet the security compliance requirements for police and legal data. So that was one of our major objectives of moving to that new platform. Of course, we're laser focused on cybersecurity. I'm sure you read the articles in the paper and in the news on what's going on with cybersecurity. We implemented a dual factor authentication, which is an added layer of security for accessing our network to help keep us safe in that regard. We also did a penetration test to test for vulnerabilities, and we have lessons learned from that. And we also did a tabletop exercise, which also gave us additional lessons learned that we'll be addressing in the rest of FY21 and also into FY22. We also did, as mentioned already, we had sent home a lot of technology and planned that out and deployed that for people to work from other locations besides in the office during this pandemic period. We also did changes and improvements to our conference rooms, looking forward to that additional, that continued hybrid work environment. We have a broadband study underway right now, and we will be looking to bring options and costs back to council in the future. We expect to have that study done by the end of this fiscal year. And as mentioned by Linda earlier, we are doing a study right now on our core financials and HR system so that we can look to replace that system in the future with a more streamlined and efficient product. We're working on a core network upgrade for our airport right now, which will bring stability to that technology out in that area and also address the future growth of airport, which is significant. Year to date, we've completed 53 projects in total that needed IT resources, and we can give you more detail on that if you'd like. Our motto in IT really is to provide right, reliable, resourceful, and responsible solutions to our community. So some of those things we're looking forward to in FY22 are people resources, specifically to meet the growth with airport, police, fire, and public works. They have a lot of growth, which you'll hear more later. And then we're also implementing 2 new major systems that will require additional support as well. We also have an IT strategic plan that we'll be focusing on. We are going to continue focusing on cybersecurity needs, addressing those, application modernization, and then just basically additions to support the growth overall that you'll be hearing more later. So as the presentation continues, I listed a few resources requests for FY22 for IT, but as the presentation continues, you'll hear a lot more about those needs that require IT's involvement. I will open it up for any questions.
Madam Mayor, thank you so much for getting up here. I know that it's not part of your regular job description, and I know how nerve-wracking that can be.
Missed it by 2 days.
You did great. I just want to thank you for your work on the broadband study, because that broadband study is going to inform so many of the ways that we deploy federal funding coming down through the America infrastructure plans and that type of thing. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how broadband serves our community, where those gaps are, and looking strategically at how we can deploy better connectivity throughout our city, because we now know after kids shifted to online learning, there are so many gaps and so many families that don't have access, and it's a huge equity issue. So I really appreciate your work on that, and I'm looking forward to helping deploy broadband throughout our city in an equitable way.
Yeah, we're looking forward to presenting the options to you. Any other questions I can address?
Madam Mayor.
It looks like there are a couple. Sharon, go ahead, Council President.
Thank you. I just wanted to note for the council that I found out yesterday that a project that IT completed for the City of Trees Challenge, so one of these 53 projects, actually is producing a better product than the national product that we had been using prior in Tree Plotter. And I just wanted to thank you and whoever worked on that for that work, but note it as the high quality of work that I think we've all come to expect from this department, and really thank you.
Thank you. That was largely our GIS team, and they're excellent.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So thank you so much for this presentation. Along the lines about the broadband study, do you know if there's a way we can determine about the needs for hardware for folks? Because I know I heard some issues this past year of where there might only be one laptop or iPad that folks have. And so mom's got to work, the child has to be on school, like on it for school. Do we know if we're going to be doing any studies along those lines?
I don't believe that's a part of the existing study, but we can certainly add that. Sure.
I don't know that it needs to be added to the broadband study. I'll just jump in here. That's something that the school district has looked at and has a sense of what's needed. We, as a city, are having trouble meeting the technology needs with our hybrid work model. But through the course of the last year, have worked with the school district when it was possible to address some of those needs. And I know that they're looking at that.
We could certainly be happy to partner with them on that for sure. Are there any other questions I can?
Thank you.
address?
And great job. It was good to see you. Thanks for pinch hitting. Really appreciate it. Jamie. And as Jamie's coming up, Courtney said at the beginning, what we've done is we wanted to share first all the kind of back office, the infrastructure that makes the programs in the city possible, because without these departments, we wouldn't be able to do the other stuff. So Jamie is the last of those support offices, and then we'll move into the departments that the public typically experiences the city through. So Jamie, you are up. Thanks.
Thank you. Excuse me. I have allergies, so bear with me here. Well, Madam Mayor and members of council, as you know, I'm Jamie Sullivan. I am your city attorney. At the city attorney's office, our mission is to empower, to guide, and protect the city of Boise and its community. Our accomplishments over the last year demonstrate that we are achieving this goal. The office of the city attorney is comprised of 5 divisions: the criminal, municipal, public safety, litigation, and administration. We support the 13 departments of the city, everything from the airport to the zoo, including the offices of the mayor and of city council. We also represent the cities of Boise and of Meridian in the criminal justice system through our prosecution and our appellate services. So last year, after more than a decade of litigation, Martin v. Boise resolved. The case clearly has legal significance beyond the Ninth Circuit, but its resolution has also taken on national significance by setting a model for cities engaging with vulnerable populations in a humane and thoughtful manner. Last year, our municipal team supported city leadership in serving the residents of Boise by crafting over 55 ordinances. Those ordinances include the Animal Code, emergency parklets, the West Side Urban Renewal District annexation, demolition and deconstruction, the bike bar amendments, the 2018 Emergency Code, and the emergency powers. The emergency powers ordinance is what supported the legal basis for over 17 emergency orders to protect our residents and our community as we have navigated the COVID pandemic. Our criminal prosecution team remains the outward-facing division of legal. Despite the suspension of jury trials by the Idaho Supreme Court and the Ada County Courthouse closure, our team presided at over 25,000 misdemeanor and 4,500 infraction hearings. And I would note that that 4,500 infraction number is an increase from the 2019 fiscal year numbers. Our office continues to be engaged in the legal community as well. We've hosted 3 criminal legal interns from the University of Idaho Law School last year, and for the first time, 1 municipal intern. From those internships, the city attorney's office mentors, enriches, and supports the education and development of the members of the future bar and underscores the significance of service to our community. And other updates, Legal's unified case management system remains the #1 top priority in the city's work plan portfolio. The implementation is scheduled within the next fiscal year. Legal has also undergone a structural assessment with an eye towards identifying gaps, reviewing current workflow plans and service delivery, growth opportunities for the office and employees as well. And additionally, we've looked at alignment with city initiatives. So that brings me to the vision of the Office of the City Attorney. Our vision is to provide the highest standard of legal services known for our talent, our agility, our service, and our quality. The 5.5 FTEs requested by legal are a result of that assessment and necessary to maintain capacity and support city initiatives. As the city has grown, so has the need for a level of expertise above and beyond the simple run the business. The 2 or the 3 municipal requests and 2.5 criminal requests represent the growth necessary in staff to continue to serve our community and aspire to our vision. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Madam Mayor. Thank you, Jamie. I just want to thank you again for the extreme amount of support that I received from your office over the last 2 years plus, and in particular from Jen Patino and her amazing help. I consider her one of the 3 heroes of that complete rewrite of the Animal Code. And I think that we've come a long ways in legal since I first came to council almost 12 years ago. I think it's become more of when a council member brings a sometimes crazy idea, legal department doesn't come with why we can't do it, but they find ways that we can. And that's what we did with the Animal Code. And I've seen it in other areas. So I appreciate what you've done in terms of presenting that type of approach. And it makes a big difference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor. Yes. Jamie, thank you. One of the things that I really believe about a legal department is that the work has to get done. So this year, for instance, our legal department basically rewrote the framework for how the mayor's public health orders would go into effect. And when the work doesn't get done, it shows up later and it gets done by somebody else, usually somebody that the city has hired. So if we don't have adequate back-end staffing to support the needs that the city has proactively on the front, we end up in litigation, or we end up with poor contracts, or situations that then cause great expense later. And so I really appreciate, I know you worked hard to come up with a list of wants, needs, must-haves in your staff on the civil side and on the criminal side to meet the needs that the city has now. And I really appreciate that, because I think many people who aren't in the legal profession don't really understand the tail costs that not having that work done upfront can cause. And I can certainly think of examples over the last 20 years in our cities where not having had that front end support has caused tremendous cost later. So strong words of support for the extra staff that you're asking for. I think, they are full-time positions that will save real money. Maybe not now, maybe in 10 years, maybe not now, maybe next year, but it makes perfect sense to me.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor. So I concur with Councilmember Bajan, but my question around this is, this has been a tough year. We've had some legal staff move on to really great opportunities. We've had to replace them. What are the prospects for actually being able to fill these positions quickly?
I currently have, we have 0 open positions in the legal department at this time. And over the last 2 years, we started off, when I started, a little over 2 years ago, we had 3 open positions. So at least on the municipal side, we had more on the support staff as well. So I'm at this point, I continue to be confident that we will be able to fill those positions with the level of quality of bright staff that we have currently.
Thank you. If I could follow up real quickly, I think some people worry when we see legal staff move on to other places, but I've always thought that the city of Boise is a great place to get young lawyers, teach them how to respond in a public setting, treat them well. And I love to see some of those now in other places in our community because I think they serve us really well. So I'm not at all concerned that we do have some turnover in legal staff. I just want to ensure that there's enough pipeline that we're okay doing that. It seems like there is. So thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor. Jamie, I just want to thank you so much for being such a great resource, not just as a legal professional, but as somebody who is bilingual. Me encanta que podemos hablar en español because it's not just about the ability to speak another language. It's the ability to think differently and to view the world from a different perspective. And one of the things that I really appreciate about you joining the city was that you took it upon yourself to invite folks to speak about issues of diversity, inclusion, and equity. And in your hiring, I know you don't have any openings now, but those are the types of leaders I want to see in our city. Nobody told you to do that. You did that of your own volition, and you greatly enhanced our organization. So I want to thank you on a personal note for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jamie. It looks like that's it. We're going to have a surprise break because we're doing okay on time. So 7-10 minutes max. We can all take a quick break. We'll be back. Terry, as you're starting, will you explain this picture?
I'm going to,
It's,
Mayor.
oh, good. It's,
Yeah.
it's pretty special.
Yes.
Is this part of our collection now?
Yes.
Great.
Should I start?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, Mayor and Council. I'm Terry Shoresman, Director of the Department of Arts and History. And the image before you is an example of what we've been working on during this COVID year. This is a work by Wendy Bleck and staff called Hunkered Down. And it's part of the way that we have documented and collected on this COVID year. I think, as most of you know, arts and history, one of our real goals is to document and collect on the history of life in Boise, or just Boise in general, both during regular and extraordinary times. So as we know, COVID was really an extraordinary time. So during this documentation, we did oral history interviews, and we have done a good photo documentation of the city, but we also did this sort of thing, which is a COVID community collection. We did a call for artists to give us an idea about their experiences in life during COVID, and we used our Percent for Art funds. We had about, I guess we had 25 artists selected that represented 27 different works. It's an array of visual media as well as written work, and they were assembled by our archivist, historian, and public art team. So it was a great collaboration. All of these are living in the Boise City Archive, and at some point we will do a lovely exhibition on this work that came out of that year. So I was just going to go over some recent investments. Excuse me. Like Jamie, I'm suffering from allergies, so excuse me. So what else? Also I will just back up a bit on our COVID year, that our team moved into some pretty remarkable online programming. And I think the flexibility and resiliency for them to do that has really enriched the kind of work that we do. So all kinds of, online lectures and presentations and talks. And we found that it's a new way to be really accessible and reach new audiences. One thing we did last week had about 300 participants online. So now what we're looking at is a way to continue to ways to include that online engagement with our programming going forward, our in-person programming. So things that are coming include installation of three pretty significant public art pieces for the year. One is the Vista Median that will go in, I think, like June 13th, 14th, 15th, around there. The park at 11th and Bannock, and Central Edition. So the Vista Median project was done in partnership with Together Treasure Valley. The park on 11th and Bannock in partnership with Parks and Rec and CCDC, and Central Edition with this Live District initiative, which really will chronicle the neighborhood history through the lens of workers, residents, and businesses in the early 20th century. We've also moved forward this year on quite a bit of conservation, including the conservation of Great Blues, which is a 30-year-old sculpture and fountain on Grove Plaza. Our Public Works Art Master Plan was completed, and the Airport Public Art Plan is forthcoming. These two important documents will help guide investment through the Percent for Art program for the major work coming out of Public Works and the airport in the next several years. Our James Castle House residency program continued throughout the year. We had several residents that have come in and created a really robust collection of art and written works that we've been very proud of. And they also did a lot of online programming that actually expanded our national reach for people who enjoyed these programs. We're also starting the Irma Heyman House renovation in the next month or so. So that will be moving forward and be completed by fall. We installed the Boise History Wall, which you haven't seen it. It's on the back hallway here of the City Council chambers. It is the most comprehensive story of the telling of Boise. And later this year, we will have a nice brochure ready to go that will supplement that. So when students and visitors come in and they look at that, they can have a takeaway with them to share. Then what else? And we'll say during the year, one of the big things that we were really committed to is this continued investment in Boise's creative sector. And that was through our grants funding. It's $150,000 a year we try to put into the creative community. We had a lot of opportunities for artists and fabricators, designers, all kinds of vendors, and continued our ongoing partnerships with groups such as Treefort and Morrison Center, where we raised private funds to fund another 69 artists that developed work about their year in COVID. And then we continued our work with collection of survey data that we provide to our colleagues in the community for tracking trends and see how we're all performing and doing as an economic impact piece. For FY22, we are committed to caring for what we have. And as our collection ages, we are facing a large backlog of maintenance needs. Like I mentioned with that great blues piece, it's 30 years old. A lot of things in our collection are at least 30 years old. We need to take care of it. So what we have is a backlog of about $250,000 worth of needs scoped. We're requesting around $80,000 that will chunk out over the next few years. That's a lot for us to take on. So we thought at $80,000, we can chunk it and get it done. And then we have our public art term position that will be converted to a permanent position, again, with all of this work forthcoming, particularly out of Public Works and the airport. So that's our request for the year. And I'll stand for any questions.
It looks like you're getting off easy today, Terry.
Well, it sure does. What the heck? Okay, I'll take it.
Oh, I shouldn't have said it.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I jinxed you.
No, I'd just like to note, if I could, how exciting it is to finally get the art in the Vista Median.
I know.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're excited about that. And it's really within the next couple of weeks, you'll see it go in.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Terry, I just want to thank you so much for being there for artists and making sure that our city could support folks who bring so much to our community. As we heard earlier in the day, during last year's, oh goodness, I don't even know what to call it, pause to life as normal. And people took to the foothills. People really took full advantage of the amenities and the resources that we have here in the city of Boise. And as always, artists, they always speak to what is happening in the moment, and the fact that we could be there to support them and to help them do what they do, which is document what is happening at this moment in history. But artists are people, and they need to eat, and they need to pay rent. And unfortunately, I would say in overall society, we tend to diminish them and their role in our community. We forget how much courage and bravery it takes to say, I am going to be an artist. I think most parents would laugh or discourage their kids from doing that because it doesn't seem practical. But when I think about my time in Boise, it is the public art. It is that great blues installation that I remember when I worked at the Brick Oven Beanery, which doesn't exist anymore, back in the early 90s. It is all of these pieces that have created our beautiful city. And it is the people who have been brave and courageous enough to choose that as a vocation. So thank you, and the Arts and History Department and my colleagues and our mayor for supporting the arts.
Yeah, thank you so much, Councilmember. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Next up, we've got Jessica with the library.
Good morning, Madam Mayor and members of the council. I'm very excited to be here today to talk to you about the Boise Public Library. As you know, the mission of the Boise Public Library is to provide access to information, knowledge, and opportunity for all members of our community. Our COVID response in the last year focused on three main elements. One was maintaining access, particularly for our most vulnerable community members. Two was using innovative services to reach users outside of our buildings. And three was building and strengthening partnerships that will enable us to better understand and meet community needs. So there was a recent national study that was done that looked at the impact of the pandemic on public libraries. And it found, on average, when public libraries closed, that 15% of the population lost their main access to the internet. This meant that just when businesses and schools and government agencies were putting more and more of their services online, a significant percentage of the population lost their primary access to the internet. And we also know that people who use public libraries primarily for internet access as their main place of access their primary uses are job training, economic development, or educational attainment. So just when people needed access most, a lot of that access was lost. Some people that were vulnerable and part of the digital divide had even more challenges. Now, here's where I'd like to point out how Boise was different than the national story. And that is because on May 18th of 2020, so credit to your interim, on May, excuse me, it's not allergies, it's nerves.
Jessica, we've all been there. We've all been there.
On May 18th, the Boise Library was able to open back up for computer access for our community and was able to maintain that internet access through the height of the pandemic, meaning that Boise residents were able to apply for jobs, start small businesses, research COVID relief funds, find health information, connect with people outside their community. That focus on maintaining access was a critical service during an incredibly challenging time. But in addition to providing internet access, the library also dramatically shifted how it reached users outside of the building. So in that, you saw a real shift in our digital collections, and that and being able to have to get a library card for the first time without having to come into the building. And we saw in the months from March to May, a 70% increase in our use of digital resources. So people continued to use the libraries.
Madam Mayor, can you say that one more time? What you just said.
That from March to May of 2020, we saw a 70% increase in our digital resource circulation.
Thank you.
We developed online programs and story times. We created grab and go kits that allowed people to come by the library and pick up a science project, a craft project, so they could continue to learn at home. And we were the first public library to offer IXL.com for our community, which is an online tool that allows students to customize their learning. And we also know how important the physical materials were. And so as soon as it was safe, we opened back up for curbside pickup. And the curbside pickup literally exploded. It was a pilot program in 3 locations before COVID. In the month of February of 2020, so the month before the pandemic, at our main library, we had 49 curbside pickups. This February, a year later, we had more than 4,000 curbside pickups. And I cannot confirm how many of them were Courtney, but I know she was there. As more and more people are coming into our buildings, we are seeing that our curbside is going down because people are excited to be back in our buildings, but we know that that number will not go back to what it was before. We know that we've got a service that people are relying on. And finally, I want to talk about the partnerships that we've strengthened over the last year, because again, these were focused on our most vulnerable communities. As we have wanted to reach more users, we've been able to partner first with our Parks and Rec team that is really helping us make summer reading a summer celebration. We will have story times in the park. We will be able to bring back our Read to a Therapy Dog program. You will see our library staff out in the community. The Idaho Office of Refugees is helping us sign up students and members for our summer reading, helping us make sure that we've got a population that's involved in that and sees a role for themselves in the library. And we're also partnering with the Boise School District with their summer meals program, because we identified that they have a couple gaps in either the calendar for summer meals or in locations. And so two of our libraries, the one at Hillcrest and at Maine, will offer summer meals. We know that kids who are hungry aren't learning as well as kids who are fed. And we want to make sure that those students who relied on their meals through the Boise School District are still able to get meals during the summer. So come to the library, get a book, get a snack, and we'll keep you learning, we'll keep you engaged. And finally, we partnered We are partnering with the Interfaith Sanctuary first last year with the Cooling Library, and then this year really making sure that we're doing some outreach, particularly for teens and youth, so that they're involved and see themselves as part of our work. Our FY22 budget requests continue that work in innovation and continue that work in partnership development. Our website is busier on a monthly basis than all of our locations combined, and it's available 24/7 for our users. It's also an outdated platform at this point, and so we're really excited to work with our colleagues in IT and community engagement to create the next generation library website that will truly be an opportunity for communities to search, to discover, to find, to take out materials, and to really have a platform for engagement. Also, with our links consortium, so those are the libraries in the area that we partner with, we would like to add a mobile app that will enable us to take advantage of technology that allows users, again, if you have a smartphone, you'll be able to search our libraries, check out books, renew materials, and that will, show the convenience and how our library is reaching outside the building. And then finally, we have a request to adjust 3 part-time positions to full-time, one at each of our largest locations in our public service staff to really be able to do more community engagement and community service. And with that, I would love to answer any questions about this wonderful asset you all have in the library.
Madam Mayor. Go ahead. Thank you. Thank you, Jessica. You did great, girl. And you're doing great. This is awesome. One thing I wanted to ask you about, so the free summer meals, who's the partner with that again?
The Boise School District.
Okay, wonderful. Also, I wanted to ask you about this. I think I can't remember if I brought it up last year or the year before, who knows anymore, Mayor, but I feel that our library staff they're amazing. If there's anything that we learned last year, it's that people who seemingly hold these positions in our community, that they don't seem like that big of a deal. The pandemic showed us that they are. I had no idea that our community would designate cashiers, grocery store clerks, people who stock shelves as essential workers, people who staff gas stations as essential workers. I don't think we appreciated the fact that our library staff who interface with everybody in our community who uses that library, that they could possibly be putting themselves in harm's way in interacting with our community. And at the same time, probably showing the most grace and kindness and respect to our community members. Whether you are somebody who is dealing with issues of houselessness or mental health issues, or if you are somebody who lives in a privileged part of Boise, everyone gets treated the same. And it is something I would like to see. I would like to see our library staff be compensated for the high level of work that they bring to our community. So, and I never know the right time to bring it up, so I figure it's always the right time to bring it up. So I just want that on record, that I would like to see our library staff make better money because of the work that they do. I would also like to ask this. One of the services that not many people are aware of that was brought to our community through the library is the I think it was offered a couple of times a month, the free legal clinic. Do we anticipate that the return of that at some point? I know that it was offered a couple of Mondays a month and it was packed in the years that I was aware that it was offered. And I know that we're not there yet, but do we anticipate a return to having the Idaho Trial Lawyers Association offer that as a resource to our community through the library?
Thank you for the question. I want to speak specifically to partnerships, and to be honest, I have not. I don't know specifically if that resource will be made available because I haven't talked to that partner. And don't know their capacity or what.
I can connect you.
I'm sure you can. Thank you. We are at the stage where we are being able to have discussions again about partnerships and how we'll be able to work with the social services in the community in that partnership model to really understand how are we aligning our services to meet community needs. And we have been working with our risk and safety team on when can we actually start having more of our partners in the building where they have close interactions with users and are very close to being able to set that up. And I think that is going to be so important because that allows us to have greater impact. And we know how important that service is and how critical libraries play in, helping us identify community needs, but then really tapping a network to bring those resources into our buildings or onto our website to help people meet those needs. So I'm really committed to having, our work in the next 6 to 12 months focus on that deep community needs and really an understanding of where the community is and what they want the library to help them achieve, and to provide those services in alignment with partners.
Madam Mayor, just a couple things. I'm certainly supportive of all the requests and asks that you're making and making sure that we recognize the true value that our library staff brings. I think there's a undertold and underseen story of what our library does all the time, and especially during the pandemic. I think a lot about the library and our community centers and the kids who kept going, and the places that provided those spaces for those kids to keep learning and not slip through the cracks. So I want to thank you there. I hope that as we kind of emerge this year, I think it's going to be a time of great innovation for entrepreneurs. I know the library played a key role when I was trying to start a nonprofit. And I think there's lots of youth and teens and young adults and entrepreneurs who are out there looking to get those things started again. Our libraries play such an important role there. And then the last thing I just wanted to make sure that I brought up is we're getting close to a time where we're going to be prioritizing some of our pathways around our community. And I do think a lot about the kids who have been continuing to go to these places, the resources that they need to get to. And I hope that the library can be part of that discussion, and that we can also make sure that there's a nice bicycle and walking amenities when they get there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. So two quick things. One, I guess on the staffing, I would just note for Council President Pro Tem Sanchez that if we want, we could look at having HR look at the staffing schedule there. I think that might be worthwhile. I'd also note, I believe that part-time positions that were well below our living wage have been brought up to that. So I think a lot of that's been addressed. My question to you, Jessica, welcome. It's good to see you, and as well as everyone else in person. On your FY22 requests, we're not talking about strategic planning, but I know that that's something that's going to be ongoing for the next couple of years, right? So
that's part of FY21.
That was 21.
Yeah.
The funding move is.
So you
the current
budgeted it all in 21. Is it, it's not complete though?
It's not
right?
complete, no. It will carry into FY22.
Okay, and that was my question.
Right,
Is
yes.
it going to carry over because we haven't seen a report yet? and-
Correct.
Right.
Yep,
I just
correct.
want to make sure the budget was all taken care of.
For that, yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
And next up, we have Doug with Parks and Rec.
Good morning, Madam Mayor, council members. Thank you for having department heads in today to share and engage with you some of the things we've done in 21 and some of the things we're planning on doing in 22. And I also want to personally thank you for the decision-making process you employed during that tough 20 and 21 year. Specifically, making the decisions to keep some of our city assets open. And I know we've touched upon it a little bit, but I'm going to say it again, that how critical and important it was to keep our nearly 200 miles of foothills trails open, to keep our 25 miles of greenbelt open. And when probably half the park and recreation departments around the country were shuttering all of their parks and beaches and open spaces, you made the tough decision that we're going to keep all of our parks open as well. And I think you all have heard a lot from our citizens what dividends that has paid to us and how important that was to get through. And we're naive, obviously, to think that we're out of the woods yet, but I think that decision-making process is bringing us out a lot stronger than when we went into that difficult 20 and 21 time. I also want to really compliment the council and the mayor on putting investments back into things like parks and recreation during that time as well. I think I heard the mayor say on a number of occasions that it's real important that we continue to do business, that we continue to conduct business. And a big part of that was bumping up projects that we had out several years and bringing them into that 2021 and now moving into the 22 fiscal year. So those investments aren't going unnoticed by the public. And I think they're important to show that excuse me, the decision on that took into account a number of different factors. And one factor was looking at the length of time that we had that asset as part of our portfolio. We'll buy land, we'll green it up, and then we'll add amenities. And it takes many years to do that. And I think what the mayor and council encouraged us to look at is how do we not only accelerate those projects, but how do we look at geography? How do we look at the demographic of neighborhoods? In addition to those time constraints on things like Boulder Park, which we've had in our portfolio since 1995. And it's now going to be not only greened up, but actually all the amenities are going in and we're cutting a ribbon on that in July. So again, I feel like it needs to be said that you make the tough decisions, but what you see on the screen is very reflective of what those decisions were this past year and a half. Just to run through some of those things very quickly. So some of the park completions and enhancements, as you can see, the Gene Harris Bandshell rededication, we got that done about a month ago. Very successful. It's going to be a great community asset, great community venue for a lot of performances. I mentioned Boulder Park. It's one of the first parks we've ever actually turnkeyed, where we've owned it for 26 years, but we've never done anything with it. And now all of a sudden we got off the dime and we're actually going to have a complete park out in Surprise Valley. We have a number of upgrades going with Catherine Albertson Park. That's been going on for about 18 months, and that should all wrap up at some point this summer. A couple of weeks ago, we cut the ribbon on the Hillside to Hollow Trailhead. And you can see there's a picture actually at the bottom of council members and the mayor cutting that ribbon. And then the Golda Harris Reserve, Nature Preserve, this was land that was donated to us in 2015, and we finally got that developed and ribbon cut on that this past November, and it's out just west of the East Park Center Bridge. And then the fastest growing sport in America, pickleball. And the mayor is smiling up there, but she has a commitment from pickleball players that she has promised she will go out and play.
When I was about to say,
spring.
now I can. I'm ready to go play pickleball.
And so what you see there is we dedicated 12 courts in Hobble Creek in early November, ironically, right before we had another shutdown. And so, but those courts have just been absolutely packed and a great addition to the city of Boise. A couple of initiatives that we launched this past year, the America the Beautiful 30 by 30, which is a global effort, but locally we're participating in this global effort where our plan is to preserve up to 30% of our land and water and natural habitat by 2030. And so this is a mayor's initiative. We're off to a great start. We've got a long list of goals that we have put in place. And I know that Sarah Arkell has done this presentation for council here recently. The City of Trees Challenge, near and dear to the heart of Council President Clegg. And it's actually going quite well. I think we're 2,700 trees maybe into this challenge of doing 100,000 in the next 10 years. And we added 100 trees to your portfolio, Councilmember Clegg, with the fruit tree planting in Spalding Ranch. Some other notable projects. This first bullet point is probably the most near and dear to my heart. We have, for the last 13 years, taken children from our community centers on a holiday shopping event. And of course, this last year, that just wasn't going to be possible. But our team took the 5 centers where we had the all day. If you recall, we were doing all day community center work in 5 locations with the Boise School District. And our team got really innovative and were able to bring the children in, put them online, have them shop with their $40 gift card at Target. Target put all the gifts away, and then our team went out, picked everything up, brought it back to each of those community centers and distributed it to the children. And if you're familiar with this program, these are for kids that otherwise would not have a holiday season. And so it was real important for this to occur. We did about half the number we normally would do, but I think it was real important that we're still finding an innovative way to do it. Our summer feeding program, this was a food bank program in different park locations that the food bank had decided last year to no longer do it. We picked up the ball in cooperation and partnership with the Boise School District. They produce all the meals, and then our team picks it up from the school district and then distributes them at 6 park locations. 5 of those park locations are also our existing summer play camp sites. So the parents that are sending their children to those sites don't have to pack lunch because lunch will be provided for them. And then one of the key foothills and open space, we did a land trade just off Collister that will provide additional access into the Polecat Reserve. And that land trade, I think we did 0.4 acres of land and we got 3.4 acres back on that trade. So a couple of things in 22. We do have a plan to update the impact fee plan by the end of the year. So that will be coming to council sometime after the fall. So one of our after-school programs is at Hawthorne Elementary School. And for the past 2 years, the Boys and Girls Club has operated that program. And it looked like this year they may not do that, but now it turns out that they are going to do it. And so we have found funding in our own budget to be able to just move what we were doing at Hawthorne. We're going to go to Hillcrest. And Hillcrest was the next on our analysis listing of high need after school programming. So we're still working on getting the details worked out. We should have that back to council sometime late this summer, but our plan is to start the school year at Hillcrest. Put in a new trailhead and trail at the Hawkins Range Reserve again, which we've had, I think, since 2015 as well. And then thank you, council. I think next year we have $3.4 million allocated for major repair and maintenance projects. And you can see those on the list. And I just point out two items that you encouraged us in looking at that geography that are getting amenities. One is the Molinar Park in Southwest Boise, where we don't have any other parks near Molinar. We're doing almost a complete build out of amenities at that park. And then at the bottom there, you see Veterans Sunset and Pine Grove Park amenities. Pine Grove, when we acquired it, was a pasture. And when we put it on a list to get greened up and get amenities, there was just a smattering of single family homes around there. And if you're familiar with that area now, it's completely built out with both single and multifamily units. And it was ingenious. I wasn't here, so I can't take credit for it. So I'll tell Jim Hall for buying that property, because who would have known around that little area would turn out, with the density that it's turned out. And so having a park right there is absolutely the perfect location that this mayor and council want to see in those dense locations. And then we've got some security upgrades at the zoo that we'll be implementing in the course of this year. The Ann Morrison Fountain, I put it on 22. We're actually starting that project in 21. We're not sure, just based on the way construction's going, if we'll get it done before the end of the year. So we put it on as a potential finish up in 22. And you're familiar with all our Greenbelt projects. We have 5 of them going, and they'll roll through into the fall and early winter, as long as we can get Jimmy smiling, because he has to take detours every day now, right, Jimmy? As long as we can get concrete and keep it moving, then we'll hopefully get all those repairs done sometime this fall. And that's.
Madam Mayor.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Doug. I just wanted to ask one question on behalf of a constituent about the Boise River Greenbelt improvement projects. Are those being rolled out in a way that detours are easy and accessible where you don't have to like go way around or anything like that. How's that looking?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Woodings, we're doing our best with that. It looks like most of the detours are pretty easily accomplished, like the 9th to Americana, for example. We're just going on the south side of the river. And so that's an easy detour. But in some cases, there's no other option than to get people out on the road because there's nothing else that we can do. But we do take that into account from the design standpoint. And we're trying to do as many of these at the same time as we can too, which is painful, but then it's just done with, and then we can be done with it. But it is well, we celebrated our 50 years in 19. So, and it was all asphalt. And so there's going to be a lot of repairs in the future. So it's just kind of like roadways that we're going to be tackling this over a period of time.
Thank you for your consideration on that, Doug.
Yeah, thank you, Doug. Thank you for the work that you've done and continue to do. It's extraordinary. And I truly believe that our park system and open spaces are one of the major reasons people want to live here and are moving in droves. And I feel for the individual that had to go through COVID-19 in their 500 square foot apartment in New York City. And we're so lucky to have access to these spaces, and we're able to stay sane as a result. I also, it's remarkable. My favorite local park, of course, is Cottonwood Park, and I visit it daily. Drop off my daughter for school and whatnot, but walk the dog. But it's extraordinary to see the change as a result of that playground. It's an incredible hot spot for kids there. It's always in use, and it's really wonderful to see. So thank you. And my only question is, I know Zoo Boise, which I 100% support and love, has continues to lose animals, and that happens. Are we keeping up with replacing those animals and continuing to invest in that area?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Thompson, yes, on the zoo. Anytime, and unfortunately, we just lost our tiger, I believe a week and a half ago, through an unfortunate situation. But yes, because we are an AZA accredited institution, we have a network of other zoos that we can immediately replace animals with. On the tiger, there'll be a little delay because we're actually remodeling that exhibit right now. And so we'll be holding off a little bit before that happens, but we already have plans on another lion. And yes, and especially those most popular animals that we have that are big attractions. And on Cottonwood Park, Councilmember Thompson is referring to our almost fully accessible playground. It's our first one in our system. And now all of our playgrounds will be anywhere from half to 3/4 fully accessible. So anyone can get on most of the apparatuses, and that's why that playground is so popular.
Madam Mayor. Thank you. Thank you, Doug. Doug, I just want to thank you and your staff for meeting the needs of our working parents. Last year was such a challenge in so many ways, but we entered the pandemic already having a dire need for childcare. And the fact that we were able to turn those after-school sites into all-day centers to meet the needs of our working parents. I think about how tragedy was averted. If you have children who are not watched, if you've got a parent who's trying to work from home and not able to watch their child, or a parent who is an essential worker and has no choice, but has to leave and go work at the gas station or at the grocery store. And the fact that if you lived in the city of Boise and you couldn't find childcare, that the Parks and Rec department was there for you. Thank you very much to you and your staff for making sure that was available.
Thank you, council member.
Madam Mayor, just comment and a quick question. One, same as everyone else, thank you and your staff for the hard work. Certainly one of the bright spots, the few bright spots of this last year, and the impact that you all made on the community is just, it's phenomenal. You mentioned up there the kind of a future investment in the Hillcrest after school program, similar to the library. I know that the community centers were one of the places where even when school was out, kids kept coming because they had to. And I'm wondering if there are any other urgent or important needs at the community centers that need to be addressed this year in the budget.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, I think we're in pretty good shape this year. And in fact, we were able to add that additional site when it appeared that Hawthorne was going to be managed by the Boys and Girls Club. But things always come up, and we're not shy about asking for those resources. Certainly, our penetration into the West Ada School District is continuing to be something we want to do. We have one location at McMillan Elementary School, and Frontier is our next site that we'd like to see at some point. And so that's just something that Councilmember Woodings has on her radar to look at in the future. And so that would probably be the next investment, I think, besides Hillcrest that we'd look at.
Great. And Madam Mayor, just quick follow-up. Yeah, thank you for keeping us in the loop there. I know that this last year, there was certainly less kids, at the community centers at one time, and the kid to teacher or, staff ratio was certainly a little bit more manageable, and they definitely keep an eye on all the kids. So if you can keep us in the loop there and let us know we can do that, be incredible.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I just have one more question. Doug, since you're standing right here, what is the plan and the timeline for Idaho Ice World to reopen?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Woodings, our plan right now is a mid-August opening. And so we're in the process of rehiring key team members that we laid off back in November. And we hope to have that done over the next couple of weeks. And then we'll start, our plan is to start building ice in July and to have the facility open before school opens.
Madam Mayor. Thanks for figuring out how to get the pools reopened. Much appreciated. Couple of questions. Your first bullet here on the request this year is impact fee plan and future investments. I'm assuming when you talk future investments, you're talking about identifying sites that will help us meet the 10-minute park goal. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, that is part of it. Yes.
Okay. And how much have we budgeted to acquire some of those? Or I know I'm asking this because as we get to the more detailed budget discussions, I would like to dig into that, make sure that we have some budgeted for that so we can actually acquire some sites.
Great.
And then last question, I've brought this up before, and I think it's especially important as we look at our 30 by 30 goals that we begin identifying sites in the southeast and southwest that really give us access to open space for the residents who live in those areas. We've got a lot of land in the foothills that's quite a ways from the city limits, and people from all over the city use it. I suspect there are opportunities southeast and southwest for those same kinds of lands. So I just want to make sure to flag that again as we're, especially as we're looking at that 30 by 30 goal. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Doug.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right. And next we've got Mark Niemeyer, Chief Niemeyer up. We've got 15 minutes before we take a quick break for lunch.
Madam Mayor, Council, good morning. You have me right before lunch. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I promise to be efficient if you're hungry. And Doug made me nervous. He said he was going to talk so long and push me into lunch. I didn't know if that was like a new director initiation or something. Here I am. So we'll get right into it, talking a little bit about our fiscal year 21 impacts, our investments. And we'll start off with new leadership. And it just has to be said, anytime you hire a new leader, a new fire chief, it creates stress, anxiety, and excitement all at once within the organization. I think 6 months in, we're past a little bit of the stress and anxiety, and we're looking forward to the excitement and the opportunities before us. So as we fill out that team, Brad Bullen was moved into our permanent assistant chief of emergency services. Chief Hummel is moved up on a special assignment to our division chief of operations. And we also have our fire marshal position that we'll be filling. So our leadership team will be well-rounded. and completed, and we'll be able to move forward with a lot of the opportunities that are ahead of us. We did just purchase 2 replacement fire engines. They're in service now for Station 2 and Station 9. And we just appreciate your continued investment in that. That is a community investment. As a chief, knowing that our fleet is up to date and reliable when they respond, both for our firefighter safety and for the community, we really appreciate that continued investment into a fleet replacement plan. We're getting ready to graduate 15 new firefighters. Again, we appreciate that investment. That's to keep us whole. That's just to replace the retirees that we have so we can maintain that service level to the community without gaps. Really appreciate that investment. I'll speak briefly on the COVID-19. 2 fronts that were really takeaways for me. One was the vaccine clinic, and we appreciate the partnership with Parks and with Public Works to get that vaccine clinic. It was basically a mass vaccination site for first responders, over 840 police officers, firefighters, paramedics, dispatchers, jail staff that were able to get vaccinated when that first round came out. To put them at ease, they're on the front lines, and to put their families at ease was very important. So we greatly appreciate that partnership that we had. And then the rapid response vehicle for COVID. When COVID was at its height, as far as our 911 calls for service, to have a firefighter and a paramedic from Ada County Paramedics partner on a unit that we had never done before, and knowing we could set that up very quickly and meet that continued community demand was very important. And we taught ourselves a lesson that we can adapt and overcome when needed. Station 6 is still set for the remodel this year. That'll start in August. So that Station 6 crew will be moving down to Station 18. Again, that's a commitment to the community that you all make to make sure our facilities are maintained well for our firefighters. They're safe for our firefighters, but they're also safe for the community when they come and visit. These are community centers. We take pride in that. So to be able to maintain those appropriately is very important. We did have a cooperative cardiac monitor purchase through our access system. That's our EMS system that Council President Clegg chairs. And we were able to save about $60,000 simply because we decided to do a joint purchase with like equipment through our EMS system. Very proud of that we got those new cardiac monitors in place. And then lastly, our standard of cover, that was a project that was in place when I arrived. We are in the final stages of that, and we'll have a report to you shortly on our findings with regards to the standard of cover. Moving into FY22, some big projects on the horizon. The Northwest, we've had some discussions about that as I've been before you in the past, looking for the right place for that Northwest station. We are getting closer and look forward to having something to you in the near future on that. I did bring Station 5 about a month ago, and the plan for that moving forward. Again, that's a rendering. The final draft and the final version of that will be done as we move forward, but that will be a big FY22 lift. And then Station 6 will move into FY22 as that project is completed on the renovation. Wildland, I have to mention that we will have another busy wildland season. It seems like every year we say it's going to get worse, but the droughts have continued. And the fuels are out there just as much as they have been in previous years, if not worse. We've been getting information almost weekly on what that season looks like. And again, it looks very busy. We've already started our efforts in our wildland urban interface area on education and also doing some chipping and then preventative work as well. So we are ready here at home. We'll also probably get requests to deploy when needed across the West with that season coming. Recruit Academy, we'll have another one in FY22, again, just to keep up on the retirements, to make sure that we stay whole and continue to offer service to the community without delay. We have 2 service contract increases. One is with our dispatch center. So Ada County Sheriff, as you know, dispatches for our fire department. We see a slight increase in that, as well as our Access JPA with some new initiatives that group will be moving forward. We do have some training center improvements, some site work and fencing. That's some of the continued ongoing expansion of the training center that has been discussed since that center was built. We're excited to continue that work. And then vehicle replacements as part of that comprehensive fleet replacement plan. Again, that's investment in the community, making sure that we have apparatus and a fleet that is very reliable when we respond. And then the last one, self-contained breathing apparatus. I know we hate acronyms in fire. We have lots of them, but our SCBA replacement, those are due. Those are on a cycle and a schedule for replacement. We applied for a federal grant last year. We didn't move forward. This year, we took a regional approach. So we entered into a grant with Eagle Fire Department and Middleton, who also had SCBAs that needed to be replaced. Just this week, we got some feedback from FEMA that we're going to the next step in that grant process, which is a very, very good sign. That's a big ticket as far as what we can pick up from the federal government helping to pay for those replacements. We feel very good about that grant, that might move forward and get done this year. Very excited about that. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Madam Mayor,
Sure. I'll first say, I think it was appropriate that Mark went last right before lunch because I think he is the fastest talker of all of our department heads. Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, thank you for mentioning the JPA EMS process. I think we're just at a point where we'll begin to see some real dividends in terms of service efficiencies. Quick question for you, too, actually, the training center improvements. We've long talked about getting to a point where that training center might be available to others in the region. How close are we to that?
Council President Clegg, great question. And I will just report to you that we're there. I talked to our interim training chief, Steve Rizzullo. He has opened that center up to our allied agencies. I know Eagle Fire has been down there quite a bit. We just had Fire Ops 101 at that center. And the plan moving forward is to continue to open that up to those that wish to participate. So we're moving
And
forward.
while I doubt that will end up making money, there will be some revenue associated with that.
I would
Is that correct?
anticipate. Yep.
Okay. And then my second question on the SCBA, I'm so glad to hear that you're approaching this with a grant. If we end up getting the grant, what will the match end up being?
Do
you know?
I believe it's 60-40. I will
Okay.
confirm that. I'll follow up on that.
So of the 918, we'd have 40.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
All right. It looks like that's it for now. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
We will break for lunch, be back here at noon for the regular city council meeting, which is relatively quick, and then head right back into the final. I think it's 4 departments that will be presenting. Thanks, everybody.